I'm going to come back to regulation in a moment, Carly, because I think that's real important for the business audience as well as people worried about their own job. But let me go to foreign policy for a moment. You were a member of the CIA External Advisory Board. How does that set you up in terms of experience for some of the issues that we're dealing with? We've got ISIS now using mustard gas against the Kurds. We've got, obviously, this Iran deal. Will one of your first priorities be to reverse the Iran deal? And what are your other foreign policy priorities?
So my first day in the Oval Office, I will make 2 phone calls. The first will be to Bibi Netanyahu, my good friend, to reassure him that we will stand with the state of Israel. The second will be to the supreme leader of Iran, who may not take the phone call, but the message would be crystal clear. New deal. New deal. Until you open every military and nuclear facility to real anytime, anywhere inspections, we will, the United States of America will, make it as difficult as possible for you to move money anywhere in the global financial system. We can do that. We don't need anybody's help to do it. Those 2 phone calls are not only important in and of themselves, but they send a clear message to every ally we have and every adversary we have that the United States of America is back in the leadership business. We need to begin pushing back immediately on our adversaries. Whether it is China in the South China Sea, China is trying to control a trade route through which $5 trillion worth of goods and services go every year. We cannot permit them to do that. Russia continues to march forward because we have not pushed back. So I would begin in that case to rebuild the Sixth Fleet, rebuild the missile defense program. We need to have the strongest military on the face of the planet. Everybody has to know it. We have to support our allies in their fights against ISIS, for example. We ought to be arming the Kurds. We've been talking about it for 3 years. We ought to be giving King Abdullah of Jordan, another fine man, the bombs and material he's requested. We ought to be sharing intelligence with the Egyptians. And by the way, we also ought to be providing Australia, Japan, the Philippines with the support that they have requested so that together we can push back on China, which is becoming our rising adversary.
How will you deal with Vladimir Putin?
Well, I won't talk to him. I've met him, and we've talked way too much to him. But Vladimir Putin will not stop until he faces, senses strength and resolve on the other side. It is why we must immediately begin rebuilding the Sixth Fleet. It is why we must immediately begin building the missile defense program in Poland. I would conduct regular, aggressive military exercises in the Baltic states, and I would be moving troops in and out of Germany. Vladimir Putin will get the message, but we ought to quit talking to him. We've talked way too much.
And final question here, Carly. On debate night, poll after poll was asking people what's most important to you. And the 2 issues that kept coming up was the economy and race. How do you expect to bring us together under the umbrella of race relations and why people and to try to help bring the country together given this rocky situation that we're all faced with today?
You know, I'm a conservative, Maria, because I know that no one of us is any better than any other one of us. Each one of us has God-given gifts. Every one of us has the capacity to live a life of dignity and purpose and meaning. Progressive policies have failed so many communities. And in particular, progressive policies have failed African American communities. And so we need to provide the opportunities in every community for someone to find and use their God-given gifts. It's why it's so important to get this economy going and growing again. We have to, in particular, disentangle people's lives from the webs of dependence that government has woven around them for decades that do not encourage them to move forward in their lives, but discourage them from doing so. We need to make sure that every single child has a real chance to be educated. Absolutely important. All of these things must happen, but we need to go back to a fundamental that every American is worthy and that we cannot leave a single American behind, regardless of their circumstances and regardless of their race.
And of course, then there's women. You have an op-ed today in Huffington Post. The status quo isn't working for women in America. You know, the Dems have been saying for a long time there's a war on women. I don't know. I'm a woman. I haven't felt that war on women. And yet, when you look at women in general, the progressive policies haven't done much for them.
Well, in fact, progressive policies have failed women, just as they have failed the African American community. I mean, just to put the facts on it, African American youth unemployment, for example, is worse now under Obama. More women have fallen into poverty under President Obama. We have record numbers of Americans on food stamps, record numbers of Americans who cannot find the jobs they want. Progressive policies are failing. In a state like California, where I lived for 12 years, the income inequality gap is vast. 100+ billionaires and the highest poverty rates in the nation. So one of the things we have to understand is that when, for example, you press on seniority systems, which reward time in grade, not contribution, you are disadvantaging women, just as one example. When you have programs that discourage people from moving forward in their lives, you are harming women and poor communities. When you have Planned Parenthood, just to pick that, which is an organization that has preyed on poor communities of color, that is a problem. In New York City, where you're sitting today, there are more African American babies aborted every year than born alive. That's a terrible thing for the African American community.
Some real unfortunate statistics there. Carly, thanks very much for joining us. We appreciate your time. We'll be watching.
Thank you, Maria, for having me. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, and we'll see you at the next debate. Carly Fiorina joining us there on the campaign trail this morning. Classic.